Hello YouTube, Punk Metal Dow here with the very first in a new series I'll be doing called Interesting Reads. This series is meant to kind of give people new book ideas for anybody that likes to read, and also potentially help out some really great authors in the process. The very first one that I'll be doing, as you saw, is called The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. And if you like what you hear so far, and this gentleman has a very extensive list of books he's written. I believe the author's name is pronounced Thich Nhat Hanh. I may be mispronouncing that. Hopefully not. But other books by this gentleman include Be Still and Know, Being Peace, The Blooming of a Lotus, Breathe, You Are Alive, Call Me by My True Names, Chanting from the Heart, Cultivating the Mind of Love, The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion, The Dragon Prince, Fragrant Palm Leaves, The Heart of Understanding, Hermitage Among the Clouds, Interbeing, Living Buddha, Living Christ, that sounds interesting, The Long Road Turns to Joy, Love in Action, The Mindfulness Survival Kit, my apologies, The Miracle of Mindfulness, Old Path, White Clouds, Our Appointment with Life, Peace is Every Step, Present Moment, Wonderful Moment, Stepping into Freedom, The Stone Boy, The Sun My Heart, Teachings on Love, Thundering Silence, Touching Peace, Transformation and Healing, Two Treasures, and Zen Keys. So apparently this is a author who is very busy. And I'll be reading about 2 chapters worth to kind of give you an idea what the book is like. Obviously, I don't want to sit here and read the whole book to people, because then other people won't buy the book. But just kind of introduce you to the book, and maybe, it's something that you'll be interested in. Chapter 1, Entering the Heart of the Buddha. Buddha was not a god. He was a human being like you and me, and he suffered just as we do. If we go to the Buddha with our hearts open, he will look at us, his eyes filled with compassion, and say, "Because there is suffering in your heart, it is possible for you to enter my heart." The layman, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Vimalakirti, said, "Because the world is sick, I am sick. Because people suffer, I have to suffer." This statement was also made by the Buddha. Please don't think that because you are unhappy, because there is pain in your heart, that you cannot go to the Buddha. It is exactly because there is pain in your heart that communication is possible. Your suffering and my suffering are the basic condition for us to enter the Buddha's heart, and for the Buddha to enter our hearts. For 45 years, the Buddha said over and over again, "I teach only suffering and the transformation of suffering." When we recognize and acknowledge our own suffering, the Buddha, which means the Buddha in us, will look at it, discover what has brought it about, and prescribe a course of action that can transform it into peace, joy, and liberation. Suffering is the means the Buddha used to liberate himself, and it is also the means by which we can become free. The ocean of suffering is immense, but if you turn around, you can see the land. The seed of suffering in you may be strong, but don't wait until you have no more suffering before allowing yourself to be happy. When one tree in the garden is sick, you have to care for it. But don't overlook all the healthy trees. Even while you have pain in your heart, you can enjoy the many wonders of life. The beautiful sunset, the smile of a child, the many flowers and trees. To suffer is not enough. Please don't be imprisoned by your suffering. If you have experienced hunger, you know that having food is a miracle. If you have suffered from the cold, you know the preciousness of warmth. When you have suffered, you know how to appreciate the elements of paradise that are present. If you dwell only in your suffering, you will miss paradise. Don't ignore your suffering, but don't forget to enjoy the wonders of life for your sake and for the benefit of many beings. When I was young, I wrote this poem. I penetrated the heart of the Buddha with a heart that was deeply wounded. And his poem reads, "My youth, an unripe plum, your teeth have left their marks on it. The tooth marks still vibrate. I remember always, remember always. Since I learned how to love you, the door of my soul has been left wide open to the winds of the four directions. Reality calls for change. The fruit of awareness is already ripe, and the door can never be closed again. Fire consumes this century, and mountains and forests bear its mark. The wind howls across my heart, while the whole sky shakes violently in the snowstorm. Winter's wounds lie still, missing the frozen blade, restless, tossing and turning in agony all night." And I won't pretend to know exactly what he's talking about. He does mention his youth being an unripe plum. So the only thing I can really imagine is that he's talking about becoming older, and that is the root of his suffering, I suppose. "I grew up in a time of war. There was destruction all around. Children, adults, values, a whole country. As a young person, I suffered a lot. Once the door of awareness has been opened, you cannot close it. The wounds of war in me are still not all healed. There are nights I lie awake and embrace my people, my country, and the whole planet with my mindful breathing. Without suffering, you cannot grow. Without suffering, you cannot get the peace and joy you deserve." Which is funny to me because there's a band, Mushroomhead. I believe they're atheists, if not agnostic. But they essentially said the same thing in Solitaire Unraveling, I believe the song was. You don't know peace till you've had suffering. And it's funny that sometimes these messages they go past belief systems. They almost kind of seem to be universal in a sense. Anyway, sorry. Kind of breaking off on a tangent there. "Please don't run away from your suffering. Embrace it and cherish it. Go to the Buddha, sit with him, and show him your pain. He will look at you with loving kindness, compassion, and mindfulness, and show you ways to embrace your suffering and look deeply into it. With understanding and compassion, you will be able to heal the wounds in your heart, and the wounds in the world. The Buddha called suffering a holy truth, because our suffering has the capacity of showing us the path to liberation. Embrace your suffering and let it reveal to you the way to peace." Chapter 2, the first Dharma talk. Siddhartha Gautama, who, as we know him as Buddha, but Buddha was not his name. It was a term for someone who's enlightened, and it's actually supposed to be the Buddha, but anyway. Siddhartha Gautama was 29 years old when he left his family to search for a way to end his and others' suffering. He studied meditation with many teachers, and after 6 years of practice, he sat under the Bodhi tree and vowed not to stand up until he was enlightened. He sat all night, and as the morning star arose, he had a profound breakthrough and became a Buddha, filled with understanding and love. The Buddha spent the next 49 days enjoying the peace of his realization. After that, he walked slowly to the deer park in Sarnath to share his understanding with the 5 ascetics with whom he had practiced earlier. When the 5 men saw him coming, they felt uneasy. Siddhartha had abandoned them, they thought, but he looked so radiant that they could not resist welcoming him. They washed his feet and offered him water to drink. The Buddha said, "Dear friends, I have seen deeply that nothing can be by itself alone, that everything has to interbe with everything else. I have seen that all beings are endowed with the nature of awakening." He offered to say more, but the monks didn't know whether to believe him or not. So the Buddha asked, "Have I ever lied to you?" They knew that he hadn't, and they agreed to receive his teachings. The Buddha then taught the 4 noble truths of existence, the Buddha then taught the Four Noble Truths of the existence of suffering, the making of suffering, the possibility of restoring well-being, and the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to well-being. Hearing this, an immaculate vision of the Four Noble Truths arose in Kandanya, I believe it's pronounced, one of the five ascetics. The Buddha observed this and exclaimed, Kandanya understands, Kandanya understands. And from that day on, Kandanya was called the one who understands. The Buddha then declared, Dear friends, with humans, gods, Brahmins, monastics, and Maras as witnesses, I tell you that if I have not experienced directly all that I have told you, I would not proclaim that I am an enlightened person, free from suffering. Because I myself have identified suffering, understood suffering, identified the causes of suffering, removed the causes of suffering, confirmed the existence of well-being, obtained well-being, identified the path to well-being, gone to the end of the path, and realized total liberation. I now proclaim to you that I am a free person. At that moment, the earth shook, and the voices of the gods, humans, and other living beings throughout the cosmos said that on planet Earth an enlightened person had been born and had been put into motion. The wheel of the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. This teaching is recorded in the discourse on turning the wheel of Dharma. I'm not even going to attempt, well, I will attempt, probably humorously, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta? I'm not sure. Since then, 2,600 years have passed, and the wheel of the Dharma continues to turn. It is up to us, the present generation, to keep the wheel turning for the happiness of the many. 3 points characterize this sutra. The first is the teaching of the middle way. The Buddha wanted his 5 friends to be free from the idea that austerity is the only correct practice. He had learned firsthand that if you destroy your health, you have no energy left to realize the path. The other extreme to be avoided, he said, is indulgence. Extreme to be avoided, he said, is indulgence in sense pleasures. Being possessed by sexual desire, running after fame, eating immoderately, sleeping too much, or chasing after possessions. The second point is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. This teaching was of great value during the lifetime of the Buddha. Or, I feel I read that wrong. The second point is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. This teaching was of great value during the lifetime of the Buddha. Maybe this gentleman's English isn't very good, I guess. I don't know. Is of great value in our own time, and will be of great value for millennia to come. The third point is engagement in the world. The teachings of the Buddha were not to escape from life, but to help us relate to ourselves and the world as thoroughly as possible. The Noble Eightfold Path includes right speech and right livelihood. These teachings are for people in the world who have to communicate with each other and earn a living. The discourse on turning the wheel of the Dharma is filled with joy and hope. It teaches us to recognize suffering as suffering. It teaches us to recognize suffering as suffering and to transform our suffering into mindfulness, compassion, peace, and liberation. So it's definitely a very interesting read. I did make that statement that maybe his English isn't so good. I feel that was incorrect of me. It feels like for the most part, this gentleman has a very good grasp on English. Maybe he's just kind of presenting points in a way that I didn't understand at the time. But if that seems like an interesting book to you, I found this on Amazon. I'm sure you could just Google the name of the book. It's The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. And you could probably find it on a number of sites. There is an app called Wish. it's essentially a lot like Amazon, only everything kind of ships from China. Um, on average, I've ordered things from there, and they've actually come in early, which is a really good thing. Definitely be very careful ordering other things, though. Things like books, I don't think you can really get messed over on. At one point, I ordered a bow staff, which, if you don't know what a bow staff is, basically think Donatello from Ninja Turtles. It was supposed to be a retractable bow staff. It was literally just thinly coiled metal, and it wasn't even a bow staff, honestly. If anything, it was more like a baton. So be careful what you order from there, but I have ordered other things, and it's been just fine. I ordered a backflow incense burner which, if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's essentially just you burn an incense cone, and the way that the smoke flows out over a surface, it kind of looks like liquid nitrogen flowing over. And most times, the incense burner will be made to kind of look like a waterfall. So it's really cool. But anyway, I'm kind of getting sidetracked on that one. But I mean, you might be able to find this on Wish. You can definitely find it on Amazon. That's where I found it. Um, Other retailers might have them. I found a lot of interesting books at I can't talk today. At half-priced books. I don't know if they're really a U.S. chain. I live in Ohio, and they seem to be in pretty much every city, if not every other city. So you might want to check and see if there's a half-price books near you. They might have this book or something akin to it. Or also, if any of the other books that this gentleman have written sound interesting to you, you could also check them out. But if you like this video, please feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all the typical stuff you hear at the end of every single YouTube video. And if this just simply wasn't your thing, please feel free to check out some of my friends. All Your Data Belongs to Us does some very artistic and interpretive videos. My friend Black Angus Reviews does movie and television reviews. He does sports commentary as well as kind of commentating on the kind of political and social climate of the day, and has some very humorous live casts. I've seen 2 of them, and they were definitely very entertaining. My friend Roachhead85 does Star Wars Battlefront gameplay, mainly Star Wars Battlefront 2015. He is a very phenomenal player. And my friend Katarina Ivory does Drag Queen Storytime, as well as snack box tastings. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, please feel free to check them out. And if nothing I've presented seems interesting to you, I thank you for giving me a piece of your time. And regardless of where life takes you, here's wishing only the very best to you and all those closest to you. Have a great day, and thank you.